If you're familiar with our channel, one of my favorite guests to have on the show is LYNETTE ZANG, and together with all of our videos on the channel, probably somewhere close to 3 million or so views. And today we're going to be diving into some really awesome, inspiring personal stuff, how LYNETTE really got to her grasp of everything that's happening with the Great Reset and the currency reset that's taking place. And I know a lot of you have really loved some of the ways that we've been doing our interviews, and so I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Make sure you hit the like button on this, give us a comment down below, and I want to remind you right there down below in the description and pinned to the comments, you can sign up to your wealth preservation call with LYNETTE and her team. There's a complimentary link to schedule your call right there down below. We're in the middle of, unprecedented amount of money printing.
Oh my God, yes.
Seemingly never stopping. And the people that don't have a plan for that, right? You get a plan for your health and all these things, but very few people actually get a plan. How do you protect yourself against out of control central bankers? And that's what this is about. So the link to schedule your complimentary call is right there down below, pinned as the top comment, and it's in the description right there down below. So you can leave with a real solid financial game plan for this reset. So good to see you again.
It's nice to see you too.
Okay, so let's start here, all right?
Okay.
You're someone that's one of the most knowledgeable people on economic resets and this whole Great Reset agenda that's now becoming a more popular term. How did you get to be someone that could see this whole agenda so clearly?
Well, I have always felt guided. And so for, I guess, a universal reason or something, it seems like, and I think this is true for everybody, all of the different things that you've done in your life get you to where you really need to be. And, for me, it really started out with my uncle, who was a major antique dealer back east. And so he taught me how tangible assets move and how they always go from undervaluation to fair valuation to overvaluation to fair valuation to undervaluation in like this figure eight. So you always want to look at quality as a key, but if they're real, they never go away. Good is always good. Sometimes it's more popular over here, at this period of time and less. But I think that that's really critical, understanding that when you have a real tangible asset and it is a very high quality asset, like gold is a very high quality asset, because it is the most diversified fundamentally of any asset. In other words, it's used across the entire spectrum of the global economy. And so that's why it's been one of the reasons why it's been money for 5,000-6,000 years. But, that was such an amazing start because he would accumulate, this was in the 60s, and he would accumulate pre-33 gold coins when he would go into people's homes to buy their fine antiques, right? And that was the only kind of gold that you could hold more than 5 ounces. You could have 5 ounces of gold, but no more. And so he had thousands of ounces of gold.
Because if you had before pre-33, then you weren't subject to the law that Americans couldn't hold it?
Exactly. And that was written into the law in 33 because Treasury Secretary Wooden wanted to continue to accumulate and collect gold with his friends. So if you didn't know the fine print, then you thought, well, I can't hold it.
That's why they wrote it that way.
Totally.
Interesting.
Totally. Oh, there's so many interesting things. But, but that was really my start. And then my father was kind of a, little bigger fish in a small pond in a small town, Kingston, New York. And so he was a developer. And so that's how I started working in banking when I was 15. Because through his contacts, they gave me a job at the bank. And I got my degree in business finance and then always worked in banking until I was a single mother. And I wasn't making enough money in banking to support my family.
What was the
And-
hardest part about being a single mother?
Oh, the hardest part about
Yeah,
being
then
a
how did you
single
overcome
mother?
it?
I don't know. I mean, it was harder when I was married to him, to tell you the truth. So, I think the hardest part okay, actually, I do know what it is. The hardest part about being a single mother is that 100% of the time, I had to put the girl's best interest first. And that didn't always, at least initially, seem like it was also in my best interest, but I still had to do that because as my mother, I'm a mother, that was my job. So I would honestly say I was really fortunate that my girls were, they were good girls. They didn't really give me a hard time and do all this stupid crap and all of that. And that could have been because I was a single mother, to tell you the truth. So we were really close, and it's just one human being doing all of the work, really. Although they do have a relationship with their father, and they always have, but time-wise, he was in Florida, I was in Arizona, and so it was, so I had most of the responsibility for raising them, which was fine with me. So that was an interesting question because I never really think about that.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some other types of hardships, because the last 24 months for many people has been very difficult, and we know this just statistically speaking because suicide levels are at never before seen levels. Divorce levels are off the charts right now. Domestic abuse levels are off the charts right now. Depression levels are off the charts right now. And so you kind of just go down the list, and a lot of people are having a tough time. And there's a lot of people that, watch this type of content, and, therefore they're pretty tuned in what's happening in the world. But that also has a lot of its challenges, because it's daunting when you really grasp that there actually is an agenda by corporate elites and global organizations that essentially want to build a one world control system called the Great Reset. And so I want to know, we've talked about it before, but let's go into, actually before we go into that, was there ever a time when you learned all this stuff and it made you really depressed?
No, I was never depressed by it because I never felt hopeless about it. Since there is historical, it actually makes it easy. Since there is so much historical precedence for what we are going through,
Interesting.
then you can look at history and see what happens to all of the assets and the way the shifts occur. And therefore, you have the ability to put yourself in the proper or the most advantageous position to take advantage of this shift. So, there have been moments where even now, I'm driving down the streets in Phoenix, there is so much construction going on all over the place that if I didn't know and study and read the guys that are in charge and what's really going on, and didn't understand how all of this debt is being securitized or turned into Wall Street products and sold back to the unsuspecting public so that they're the ones that eat it in the shorts, I would really, I could understand why people are like, maybe I'm crazy. And I can't even say that I've not said that to myself upon occasion. And then I go, wait, forget it. You're not crazy. You're immersed in this stuff. You can see what the powers that be, what the central banks are doing. You're reading the documents. And, when I look at their actions and whether or not they support the words that they spout out into the public, and when you realize, too, that they really cannot tell you what's truly happening. Because if they did, you would make different choices. And they need you to stay in the system so that it can transfer your wealth their way. And whoever they've chosen for that wealth, the corporations, etc. So no, I never got depressed about it, and I never really questioned myself for too long maybe for about a heartbeat of a second until I went, oh, no, Lynette, you know, you're reading their documents. You have to believe them because you're watching their actions as well. So,
So let's talk about a time that we've discussed before, but for someone that maybe didn't hear that interview, and maybe for someone listening to this right now, maybe you're depressed, or maybe you're getting to the point where you're just like, what's the point of any of this?
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk about that time in your life when you were in that, and how, more importantly, how you were able to overcome it.
well, you know, yes. I mean, let me move forward a little bit so that they have some level of context. Because when I was a stockbroker and I was a single mother at the same time, and one day my daughter, Megan, and if you watch my channel, most people know who Megan is, and she stayed home sick from school. And I had back-to-back appointments that day that I just couldn't miss. And my mother lived right down the street, so it wasn't very far. And the school was right around the corner too. So I said, well, Megan, you know, if you need anything, just call Nanny and I'll be home as soon as I can. And when I got home, that poor child was so sick. My mother had called her, but she was too sick to answer the phone. So my mom had assumed that she just went to school because she could walk to school. The guilt that I felt about leaving my poor sick child home alone was, I mean, it tore me up. It really did tear me up. And so, well, I have not talked about this piece on camera. That other little snippet I did, but not this. So, all right. But it's something that needs to be heard because nobody lives a life unscathed. Nobody lives a life without going through these things. So I decided that I needed to do something where I lived and worked in the same place so that that would not happen again. And I ended up opening up a restaurant in Prescott. And on a number of levels, it was pretty successful. The restaurant was downstairs. We lived upstairs. And I worked really basically nonstop 24 hours a day. It was the worst period of my life. You couldn't pay me enough to do another restaurant. It was horrible. And for those out there that have done that, you know, it's constant. But while it might have been a success on some levels, fiscally and emotionally and mentally, it was not a success. And that was the first time in my life that I knew I failed, right? I was not a person that was used to failing because I'm so doggedly determined that I could typically always just push my way through whatever it was. But this time I couldn't do that. And the shame was frankly overwhelming. So for a block of time, you know, I mean, I was like a hawk. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, looking around so that if I saw anybody, even driving in a car, if I saw anybody that I knew, I turned the corner. I avoided them like the plague. I didn't want to say, I was too ashamed. And I was definitely suicidal. I lost all hope. And I could have told you for 3 years, I was suicidal. I knew where I was going to do it, how I was going to do it, not the when, because the only reason I didn't do it was because I would not have put that on my children. I definitely did not love myself at that point at all. I mean, I was completely ashamed, but I loved my children. So that's why I said in the other video, they saved my life because I know without any doubt at all, I would not be here if it were not for them. And you kind of get to a point where there's only so far down you can go, and there's only so long that you can stay there before you either have to finish the job or you have to get healthy. And that's when I went to France. And that may sound, oh, you went on a vacation. I didn't have much money at that time. It was to go someplace where I could not speak the language and nobody knew me, so I did not have to look constantly over my shoulder. And I mean, at that time, I went to hide, after my restaurant closed. I didn't go back and become a stockbroker again because I didn't have the head for it at that time. I was just too wounded. So instead I went and I worked in a restaurant back in pastries, and where I thought I would be invisible. I wasn't really, but it happened to be a French restaurant. So that's really why France came up, because one of the people...
Did you feel like you were running away?
No, I was not running away because I wasn't going to stay in France. Mm-hmm. I went there so that I could have this block of time to get healthy, because I couldn't bring myself to see what I needed to see. I was so ashamed that every time something would come up, I would turn away. I couldn't do it. Even when I tried to go to therapy, right? The only thing that I could talk about with the therapist is how frankly, killing myself would impact my daughters. That's all I could talk about. I couldn't talk about anything else because I couldn't face it. I couldn't look at it. So when I went to France, there's so many stories in here, but I brought a backpack of all the things that I thought that I needed and a tent. And I bought a boy's bike when I got there. And, I had these, I had picked up this little book, Bicycle Journey Through France, something like that. Right. And, I went off on my journey. And what I said to myself and what I promised myself, and this is what I did, and I would frankly recommend this to anybody that's feeling depressed and not able to look at this feeling and feeling suicidal. Every single night before I went to bed, I asked God to show me what I needed to see, and I promised I would not turn away. And I didn't always have money for food, but I always made sure that I had a pad and something to write with. And every morning when I would wake up, I would first I don't know what I wrote, but I would just write if I had a dream or whatever. I would just write in this notebook. And then I would thank God for keeping me safe overnight and ask him to show me what I needed to see and promise that I would not turn away. And I think that was really critical. I was really promising myself that I wouldn't turn away. I was fortunate enough to have like a block of about 3 months because they got out of school. I put them on a plane. And it took about 6 weeks, and it was the first day in 3 years. I'm riding my bicycle. The sky was a robin's egg blue. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was in the middle of these massive cornfields. And that was when the first image came up and went bam, right in my face. And literally, I almost fell off my bike. I had just ridden 60 kilometers. I mean, it was pretty interesting. And I sat down and I wrote. I can't tell you what I wrote because even in the last 30 years, I mean, this was 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago, I never thought about what I was writing. So I didn't craft anything. It was just whatever was in there coming out on the paper. And what was really interesting was that whenever I saw these images of what I needed to see that were so hard, it only happened on those rare occasions when I was actually feeling good. When I was feeling depressed and sad, and I was never lonely, even the whole time in France, but they didn't come.
Give me an example. What are you meaning? Like things about your life that were being shown to you as ways to basically get out of your depression?
No. Wow. Okay. I didn't know anything about running a restaurant. And here I was putting this whole thing together and being a mom, and I was doing both of those things 24 hours a day. And I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. So I called the girl's father and asked him if he could just take them for just a little bit of time, maybe like a month, something like that, just enough time so that I could figure out what the hell I was doing and just get myself in a better position because I was overwhelmed. So he said that he would do that. That was okay. And he came out to get them. And he got them. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I mean, knowing that I changed my whole life to be that stay-at-home mom for them. Mm-hmm. And then to have to send them away for a little while killed me. It killed me. So they left. 3 days later, he brings them back to say goodbye to me again. The first image that came up were those two little faces. It was a white car as they were driving away for the second time. You want to talk about guilt? You want to talk about feeling like I was failing them? I mean, they're my life. That killed me so much that I couldn't even talk to them for like 3 weeks. So, on top of everything else that happened, but that was the very first image that came up and almost knocked me off my bike. Should have brought some tissues in here. What was your question?
It was that. It was what was the image that came up?
That was the image that came up.
So these images were coming up, do you believe, to basically help you just kind of like process them? Like they had almost been buried?
Yeah. You know, you need to, because when you bury all of these feelings, I mean, it's poison. It's poison to you. And, you know, yeah, you need to process them. You need to see them, and you need to forgive yourself. Now, I can't say that at that point when the image came up that I was able to forgive myself. But I 100% knew that, you know, people think that if they just bury something in the back of their mind and their subconscious, then it just goes away.
Right.
But it never really does. It flavors and impacts every single thing you do until you deal with it. Mm-hmm. And then it can turn into something, you know, constructive. Mm-hmm. But that was the first image. That was the hardest image. And so, you can see, I mean, I'm still moved by it, you know, 30 years later. You know, there still is a level of pain around that. But that was the start of the healing. So it was those kinds of things that I needed to look at and accept that, you know, I mean, these are the consequences of the choices that I make. I mean, there are good consequences and there are bad consequences and there are necessary consequences. But I can tell you that without a doubt in my mind, that the reason why I had to do the restaurant and the reason why I had to go through all of that was to learn humility and to become humble, because I don't think I was particularly humble before that. I think I just was probably overconfident in my abilities because, like I said, I mean, if there was something I really wanted, I could always push it through. I never thought that I could ever fail. And that was a big, in many ways, a big fat fail.
So, for someone that's listening to this video and maybe they're going through a tough time, maybe they're depressed. I mean, maybe they're at the point where they're even contemplating what is the point in even being here. Or, maybe they're just having a tough time with their own relationship with themselves and getting the confidence to take their life for the next level.
And you know what else too, Jake? Because I've seen this with other people that I know, and so I think maybe some people out there are feeling like this too. If they're, if they lost a job or lost something, and they're sitting there blaming themselves when in many ways it's the puppet masters that have decided you're not too big to fail. Right? Now, that was not my circumstance. That was, I self-made it
right now.
But
right,
exactly. And I mean, I've had family members that were decimated by the policies and the policy choices that Washington has made and allowed and permitted because it benefited them, like Amazon. Amazon has decimated a lot of mom and pops. The destruction of the middle class didn't start with this cerveza virus.
Right.
Okay? That started really back in about 2000, was when 99, 98 was when that shift started to occur, and consolidations and the loss of mom and pops. So, people that have a small business and that business goes under, they're blaming themselves. What could they have done different, or why couldn't I have made that a success? When, you have to understand that there are some things that are beyond your control as well.
So if that happened to you, then what is your advice for someone that's in this? And also the reason that I think this is important, right, is because this is a whole scale psychological warfare.
Yes.
And one of the important elements is for us to look within ourselves and to heal ourselves emotionally and to up-level ourselves emotionally, because that's what's going to give us the wherewithal to win, right? And right now, it's no coincidence that after these lockdowns, when the economy's been decimated, that all of these emotional and personal statistics are at record highs. Suicide, domestic abuse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're in that position, what is your advice to someone, as someone who's went through that, where you're like, I knew when I was going to do it, I knew what I was going to, so someone who's been at the very bottom of that. And on the flip side now, someone who's incredibly successful. We're in this, for many people, it's their dream home. And heck, this is your second house, your bug out house. You've got a hugely successful business. You're reaching millions of people online through it. So to have that full circle, I guess Joseph Campbell calls it the hero's journey. If you're in that spot where you've been kind of decimated, what's your advice?
Well, I think you brought it up before. I don't know if we did it in this video, but we've, talked about it. It's something that's bigger than me. If all I had been focusing on were me, I can guarantee you I would not be here. Mm-hmm. I guarantee that. But because I was able to focus on my children, I knew I didn't love me, but I love them. So you need to see that you are bigger than just this one little body. And that if you leave this planet and you don't get healthy, that it has, it would have impacted more than just my children. It would have impacted them probably the most. but there are other people out there and it would have absolutely impacted them. And I'll tell you something else, because a lot of people feel really alone and isolated now. And especially with all the lockdowns and everything, where you really are. And I mean, how different is it for us sitting here and us, and the fun that we've been having together. And of course, I've always enjoyed the interviews that we've done, but frankly, this is way better. So, part of it is, realize that you are not alone. Think about something that is bigger than you. And even what you went through, like, I'm sharing this really personal stuff with you because sharing it for those that it might help is way more important than me just holding this inside and knowing what I went through. And so I think that if people start to look at, who needs me and what do I need? And they start to approach that, because somebody's going to need you for something. It doesn't really matter, and maybe you can uplift somebody else, but you have to think bigger than just you. Because when you think only about you, then it's too narrow a view. You can't see the impact that you're leaving would have on the world. Because it's all energy and it's all vibration. So be kind to yourself, because I think a lot of people are blaming themselves when this was a plan. And this was bigger than you. So you think bigger than you. And then make that commitment to get healthy, because that's really where I was. You can only stay down at that level for so long. And then you either have to get healthy or you need to finish it. Don't finish it. Don't let anybody else win. Be the hero of your own story. And I ask God for help. Show me what I need to see. And I promise I won't turn away. And, the story that I talked about that time when you asked me, and you said, and it's really been interesting for me, because you said, how is it that you're so courageous? And I never really, I guess I'm maybe starting to think I might be a little courageous now, but that's not the way I think of myself or any of the things that I've ever done. I just know that I'm here to be of service on this planet, and I'm here to share my gifts. Every single person here, every single person that's watching this video, every single person that's not watching this video has gifts to give to the world. Give them. Start giving them. You know what they are. We each know what they are. But there are always people that are in worse circumstances than you are. There's always somebody. Maybe reach out and say hello. You don't even have to know what you're doing. You don't even have to know what your purpose is. All you really have to do is reach out your hand and say hello. That's a great start. But that's how you do it. You make a connection and you realize that it's much bigger than you. Just all you have to do is be part of the community, right? Just reach out. Just make that first step, that first move, and promise yourself. Just ask for the help that you need. What do I need? Ask for the help that you need, and promise that you won't turn away from what you need to see.
Yeah, I like that. And just kind of as we wrap up here and we come full circle, this whole agenda basically of control, it's not just about the financial system.
No.
It relies off of everybody tapping into very small fragments of their own potential and staying at that level. And one of the interesting full circles too is, like, there you are and you're saying, well, I knew what I was going to do, when I was going to do it. I felt like, basically you said you felt worthless, all this shame, you didn't want to see anyone you knew. And then not that many years later, here you are, and you have this incredible sense of meaning in your life. You have a freaking amazing, prosperous business and life that most people could never dream of. You're influencing, inspiring all these people. And so, you may be just sitting here watching this video and you're like, yeah, but like that's easy for Lynette to say. But the crazy thing is you really don't, it's impossible to comprehend what you're really here to do and how good your life can get in a very quick period of time just by making these small shifts. And as we kind of wrap up, number one, if you enjoy this episode, give us a comment down below. Share your story. Let us know. Become a part of the community. Let us know what parts spoke to you. If there's someone that you know that's going through a tough time, copy and paste this link. Text it to them. Share it with them. Watch it with them online. Get a cup of coffee and go over and just sit with your friend instead of just text it to them. Get together with them. And then next, right there down below is a link where you can set up your complimentary gold and silver wealth strategy call with Lynette and her team, right? This is what she's here to do. And this is the thing that always wipes everybody out during these resets. So it's important to have your game plan set up. You can schedule a complimentary call. And if you feel alone, get on the phone too, just so you have someone that talks to that's on the same page as you. So right there down below, it's in the description and comments. And as we wrap up here full circle, how do you go from that level to the next level?
Well, there was another habit that I started then, and I carry it through. And anybody that's worked with me for a while knows this too, when I had clients. And every morning I would ask how I can be of service. How can I be of service? And the funny thing about that with the universe, when you're asking the universe how I can be of service, then you'll understand that, but the universe is also going, how can I be of service to you? So ultimately, you find your purpose, but I mean, that's such a simple thing. How can I be of service today? That takes it completely away from you and just focusing on that, and it makes it into a broader picture. And I will say that I didn't know what my purpose was going into that trip, and it wasn't till toward the end of the trip that I discovered it, and it was, and that was, my strawberry story, which is, maybe you can put the link to that if you want to, watch that, and that's when I talked about the strawberry story. But that one person, and I think for me, she was an angel, because I was still questioning why I was even on the planet. And she looked me dead in the eyes and she said, you wanted to share what you have with us. We want to share what we have with you. And it was that moment of clarity that I had been seeking. But could I have gotten that message and really understood it at the beginning of that trip? I don't think so. I don't think I was open to it yet because there was too much pain. But ask, how can I be of service so that you don't feel alone? Because you're not alone. You're not. Reach out and be of service.
Powerful stuff. So we want to thank you for watching today's episode. We hope you got a lot out of this one. We hope this is something that, if this speaks to you, watch this one again through. Just hit the rewind button and allow yourself to absorb it. One or two of these big takeaways, and that's how we win, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just about learning what's happening to the financial system or the political system. For us to really win and for us to retain our sovereignty and our freedoms, it's a mental, emotional, and interpersonal realm too. And so if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to sign up to your complimentary gold and silver wealth preservation strategy call with Lynette and her team right there down below in the description and pinned to the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification. Give us a comment down below. Lynette.
Well, I've really been enjoying this, and I'm glad that I got to share some more personal stuff. I am taking a little vacation here, and I brought my memory box up with all of those binders full, or not binders, but pads full of the notes. So I'm about to go revisit my 30-year-old self. Well, 38, it was 38 then. But, going back 30 years. So, yeah, do it. And don't be afraid, because I'm telling you right now, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you are, you bring a lot of value to the table. Love yourself, be kind to yourself, forgive yourself, and reach out. Reach out.
Absolutely. So give us a comment down below. Let us know how you're feeling. And as she said, reach out to someone. So thanks for watching today's episode. Thanks for being a part of the community. And be sure to schedule your complimentary gold and silver wealth preservation strategy call right there down below.